In firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with trusted gear featuring brands like MSA Carnes for helmets and Seek for thermal imaging cameras. Stay prepared. Visit thefirestore.com today.
Fire Facilities manufactures steel live fire training towers, customized to meet your training needs. Check us out at FDIC or learn more at firefacilities.com.
Greetings and welcome to the Women in Fire radio show. Today we are going to have presenters for our conference, which is the Women in Fire Leadership Conference that is going to be held April 8th in conjunction with FDIC in Indianapolis. Thank you to Fire Engineering for allowing Women in Fire to be part of their radio series. I'm Lisa Baker. I'm the Southwest Trustee for Women in Fire. And today we have 6 of our presenters, like I mentioned, that are going to go ahead and talk about their class, the importance of why you should take their class. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. So does anyone want to go first, or you want me to just call your name, or however you guys want to do it? Tiffanye, Chief Wesley, why don't you go first?
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Chief Tiffanye Wesley, newly retired from Arlington County Fire Department after serving 30 years of dedicated service. Excuse me for my voice. I lost my voice about a week ago. Too excited, screaming about retirement, I guess.
Yeah.
I am part of Women in Fire, and I've been teaching a class titled, What You Permit, You Promote. This is essentially a refresh from my Buddy to Boss class. So it's the same topic, same objectives. I changed the title because there is someone already teaching that title. What You Permit, You Promote essentially is a class about leadership, and it's about accountability. And where my class differs from the other class, the other class comes from a point of once you're promoted. I talk about all of the things that you need to think about, consider, and have under your belt prior to even sitting down for the test. And that's essentially how I start my class. If you wait until you are promoted, until you receive that gold badge, before you think about what will you do if you're challenged from a friend, it's going to be too late. If you think about where to draw the line in the sand, once you're promoted, it's going to be hard to navigate. I'm not saying it's impossible. It will just be harder to navigate those areas. You need to know your where you stand on different accountability levels, right? What's your discipline going to look like? If it's a friend, someone you thought was a friend who challenges you, are you going to hold them to a different standard? And if you do, we all know what happens when you treat people differently, right? Then that's when the naysayers will begin to talk and say, well, she's treating her friend, he or she is treating people differently. And when you do that, you lose credibility. So this class is all about accountability. It's about credibility. It's about raising your standard. And what you permit, you promote, and what the end part of that is, what you promote becomes your standard. So essentially, this class is about creating a standard of excellence. Every time you present, every time you're in front of anybody, that's whether you're on the drill field, at the kitchen table eating lunch. If you establish a standard of excellence, every area that you go, you'll be able to build your credibility. You'll be able to build your brand on that.
Thanks, Chief. Adam Parkhurst, do you want to go next?
Sure, that's fine. Is my mic loud?
Yeah.
It's really loud in my head.
It's good, thanks.
Yeah, so my lecture is called Performance Culture, Moving Forward by Redefining Average. And it's not necessarily a leadership class. It's a class about culture and defining culture. And then how, once we define our culture and look at it, how we redefine it to head in the direction that we want. Because I view culture and standards and a lot of that stuff kind of like a river headed downstream. Is, anybody who does swift water knows that if you're not moving faster than the current, you're just debris. And so if you don't define your culture, it'll define itself. And typically it doesn't define itself well. It defines itself, in the lowest standard possible. So kind of a background on how I came to a lot of this. I've been in the fire service almost 20 years, and I got my bachelor's degree in emergency management, and saw that a lot of the people that were driving the emergency management field were sociologists. So I went and got a master's degree in sociology. And while I was doing that, I took a lot of the theories in social theory and collective behavior and norm acquisition and things like that, and applied it to the fire service because it's where I live and it's what I do, and sort of reevaluated a lot of this stuff and how we look at culture, how we define culture, because everybody talks about, and they want, you'll see on recruiting flyers all the time, and people use the term, oh, we're an aggressive fire department. We're an aggressive fire department. We have aggressive tactics. And like, what does that even mean? What is an aggressive tactic? And I bet everybody defines it differently. And so ultimately that was kind of how I came to a lot of this stuff, was applying it to what exactly is culture in the fire service, and how do we control it? And so I really came up with three things: is you have to set high but attainable goals. And then you have to give everybody the tools and time to achieve those goals. And then you have to hold everybody at every level accountable, including yourself. And one of the things I did while I was getting my degree was I got the opportunity to take a number of adult education classes. I've never studied adult education. I've been an instructor for a long time. I teach paramedic school. I teach at fire school and all that, but I never really learned exactly how to teach. And I learned that I think a lot of times we're really good at picking somebody who's good at the job and asking them to teach. And just because you're good at the job doesn't always mean that you're a good teacher. And so I dove into adult learning theory a little bit, Malcolm Knowles' theories on adult education, which is called andragogy. And it's very different than the way most of us learned in grade school. Children learn much different than adults do. So the primary 5 tenets to adult learning theory are: the number one thing that I think a lot of us get wrong is that it's self-directed. Adults really want to have some control over their learning environment. We're really good at either sitting them down in a classroom and throwing information at them, or, putting them on the drill field and telling them how it's going to go and go through the steps. And then we all go home. And I don't know that we're as good at taking input as we can be. It has to be relevant and goal-oriented. If the question that most of us dread is, well, why do I need to know this? Right. And if you can't answer that question, I know it's a BS question a lot of times, and they're kind of trying to catch you on your heels. But if we really can't answer, hey, here's how you can take this information and immediately apply it to your job, then they're probably not going to take it seriously, and they're not going to garner as much information as they could from it. So they need to understand how they could apply this really rapidly, and especially for most of the fire service where, hands-on learning is the backbone of what we do. And then where I think we fall short on that is hands-on learning. We're pretty good about going, okay, you got it right one time, so you're pretty much an expert, and now we're going to move on. And then it may be 2 years before you ever do it again, and then we can't figure out why people didn't succeed. I use a lot of comparisons to sports, and you see the greatest of all the athletes. Michael Jordan's a perfect example. He was a master of the basics, and he talks about mastering the basics all the time. And so, yeah, we have to be masters of the basics, and we have to learn how to, there is no advanced theory. We're getting really good at the basics. And so that's relevance and job oriented. And then experiential learning is utilizing individuals' experiences and then applying it, good and bad, right? So we have mental models that are good and mental models that are bad. And I'm sure all of us in here have been in the fire service long enough. Those that have been, we have some bad mental models. The term a lot of times you hear now is training scars, where we were taught something. We're going to do it this way in training, but then in real life, you're going to do it different, right? And that's just not the case. most of the time. So it has to be experiential. You have to be able to apply good and bad experiences. They have to be ready to learn, which is always hard, right? So you have to create that environment where they're excited to learn. And that's a big shift in the fire service that I've seen over 20 years is these younger members coming in and they're excited. They're getting in the fire service, because that's the job they want. They want to be good, solid masters of their craft, and they're going to outside third-party trainings and things like that compared to 20 years ago when I started. The old guard were just guys who they tested and they could either go work for the streets department or the fire department. It was a good part-time job, so there's a big change in that, and I'm excited about that. And the readiness to learn, I think, is changing, so that's good. So that's a fourth tenet, is readiness to learn. And then number 5 is problem solving oriented, and that's really what we are, is we're professional problem solvers. So that covers kind of the basics of it. I talk a lot about toxic culture and positive culture. I give some examples of some social theories and some social experiments that have gone wrong and proven how easy it is to develop toxic culture if you're not purposeful and if you don't intervene early, especially if you're a supervisor. Sort of similar to what Chief said before me is, it's what you tolerate, right? And if you promote bad behavior, then that's gonna be where you end up. So that's kind of the backbone of what I talk about in this is figuring out where you are and where you want to be, how to define culture, adult learning theories, and then how to intervene in toxic cultures.
Thanks. That sounds really interesting. Captain Terri Reid.
Hello, everyone. My name is Terri Reid. I'm from the Baltimore County Fire Department. My lecture is going to be on mastering recruitment, retention, and mentoring. So as we all know that today in this age and time that recruitment has just been tough in our field in the fire service and EMS service. So then we ask ourselves, why is it tough? So it's tough because some of the shows we have that's on TV. Let's talk about Rescue 911. Let's talk about Chicago Fire. Hey, these shows are great. They're great to watch. They're great to see. But is this our actual reality? And some people look at these shows and think they're our actual reality. And hey, some of it, very little of it is true. And a lot of it is not really our reality. So what we're doing is that's mimicking what the public is seeing. And when they see that about the fire service, they're saying, hey, this is great. This is perfect. This is what the fire service really is. And when they get into it and they see that's what it's not, within 3 to 5 years or less, they're out the door. So some of the things that society is showing them or what they're seeing when they go into our department isn't really what it is. As for retention, we need to know how to retain our personnel. Let's ask them questions. Hey, what's going well? What's not going well? And why is it not going well? And what solution do you have to make it go better? We can listen to people have their issues. We can listen to them gripe about certain things. But hey, let's listen to their concerns and their solutions, and let's give them those tasks to help build our fire service to be stronger. As for mentoring, and now in this day and time, we have to have people that have mentors. They're seasoned, either firefighters, paramedics, EMTs. They're seasoned personnel that can help lead the people that's upcoming into our fire service to build it to be stronger than it has ever been before. Some of the things we have to look at is the technology portion of it. Everything is turning into technology. A lot of people something everyone doesn't go without is a cell phone. So we know that it's apps out there. We know that it's a lot of good data and technology out there to help our personnel. So it's really good to make sure we have the right data, the right apps to lead our personnel on top of not just personnel, not just app driven, but don't forget, hey, we have some people that we can communicate with, we can actually talk to. I don't want everybody to believe that technology is just the add all be all, because it's not. We have to know how to put the electronics down and know how to actually communicate with one another. When we do that, that all encompasses us to have communication, not just by text, by email, but to go back to the basis. Because when all else fails, I need people to understand that we need to understand where the bases are in life. So the biggest thing is career volunteer, we're hurting. We need to understand that this is not just a job, this is a career. And we need individuals to understand we need their support into building the fire service back up. And we want people to be here for the eternity and not just for the moment. A lot of people stay here and just like, oh, I don't know if this is just what I want. They're just here for the moment. But you have to think about longevity. You have to think about your future. You have to think about your I'm sorry, I drew a blank, but you have to think about having things for your retirement. You have to think about things in like medical, having things for insurance. You have to think about those things. And I really don't think people give that much of a thought when they say, hey, I'm just going to hang up my helmet and go do something different. This is a type of job that you can go into and things are color coded and you can watch the dynamics. Like, let's just use smoke, for example. You can watch the dynamics of smoke and how things change, and that can be taught. But we also do have the flip side of risk. I do find that some people are scared to come into the fire service of the risks that a lot of people do have, which is cancer in certain portions of the body, whether it's the breathing or portions of their body. So I would just encourage people that, and I hate to say it like this, but it's so many different things that we can be challenged with in life, but we have a lot of safety measures in place for the fire service. We're very cognizant of things in the fire service to prevent the top number one, like one of them is heart attacks, cancer. We want people to work out. We want people to take care of themselves. We want people to get their yearly physicals and things of that nature. So there's a lot of newer things that we look at, but we just want people to be on board that anything you do in life, you still have to take care of you in order to be productive and do the job, any job that you want to do. But we really want people to be a part of the fire service and take on this legacy that a lot of us are going to end up leaving behind, and be productive and be positive and follow those rules and regulations that we set forth, like the fire wipes and keeping things, the soot out of their face and things of that nature. So I'm very eager to deliver my lecture and having people learn from that. But there's grants, there's so much that we can reach out to, but we have to want to do the work also. And I find that people want an easy fix, like, hey, how can we do this? I want an easy fix. Well, we have to put in the work. And sometimes you have to have a team to put in that work in order for us to bloom to be a successful fire service, whether it's career, volunteer, or a combination. So I'm really excited to be a part. And Lisa, thank you for having me on tonight.
Well, thanks for joining us here. I think, John, did you have a question? John?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the one question I did have, I couldn't resist. I thought it was pronounced Balmer instead of Baltimore.
Oh, Terri.
I'm from the county, so I might pronounce it Baltimore a little different. I actually live in White Marsh, Maryland, but I'm right outside of Baltimore. So that's the reason why I may pronounce it a little differently.
It's okay. I just thought I'd lighten things up a little.
Thanks for
I
that.
Like
appreciate
Merlin.
Captain Reid, I have a comment. Kind of, you said like people leave the jobs, and I know like when I first came in the fire department, you got a job in the fire service, and you kind of stayed there. You didn't jump around, and now you see. I don't know if it's so much the younger generation or just firefighters in general are leaving one department, going to another department, going to another department. Especially in California, if you look on social media, how many departments are hiring lateral paramedics and firefighters? It's a lot on any month. You could go on there and find 10 to 15 large fire departments that are now hiring lateral firefighters. And agency that I retired from, we never had done it, and we just recently started doing it probably 5 years ago to get the paramedics. So thanks for your class. Sounds like it's very interesting, Captain Reid. Next, we will go to Deputy Chief Larry Conley.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Good evening from here, and I guess out in Cali is good late afternoon. And my favorite time of the year, since we set the clocks up, daylight savings time is back. So I don't like going to work when it's dark and come home when it's dark and it's all cold in between. So I look forward to FDIC and everything that comes after that. Thanks for having me on. My class is going to be called Tightrope, and part of the whole Tightrope series comes from a class that my brother David and I have taught over the years, almost going on 15 years now, which is the glue out of the glue concept of growing leaders using empowerment. It's been a personal leadership class the whole time we taught it, probably almost 13 years at FDIC now, and different places around the country where you talk about in Nairobi, Kenya, to Alaska, and just everywhere in between. So we've been excited to get around the world with this personal leadership concept. The genesis of it was years ago, being in the fire service going on 33 years now. A lot of my time was not only spent at busy firehouses, but was spent teaching recruit classes. And what I've noticed in teaching recruit classes is that we were doing a very good job of showing people the tools and the trade of doing the job. They can throw ladders, they can deploy hose, they can do all that. And they thought that doing these type of tasks with perfection made them good firefighters. But they sucked as people and they sucked as team members, and they may come to work and not be very good people. And when you have a high trust profession like we have, people trust you in the most intimate moments. But not only when we're talking about getting in the street, we're also talking about just around the firehouse and running around, dealing with each other as team members. And when we do come together as team members, we come from different social constructs, different political views, and things like that. And those things have to be somehow synergized at the firehouse. And if it's not, it always used to say, you can't get the team right with the people you do know. You definitely can't you can't have longevity and quality delivery of service for people you don't know. So that was the genesis of the glue personal leadership model in the first place. But from that, I grew since then. I was at the end of my career of being a private and moving on to fire captain when we wrote glue. And then as I got appointed to deputy chief in Collinsville, which I'm retired from now, deputy chief for training, I noticed that there's always this balance that I had noticed before, and we highlighted in this class, this tightrope class, mastering the art of effective and efficient leadership. And with tightrope, the community expects us to be effective. And around the firehouse and our agencies and our headquarters and all of that, they expect us to be efficient. You got to check those boxes. You got to make sure you're meeting all kind of state standards, local standards, NFPA standards, and whatever your agencies are accountable to, ISO standards, things like that. But the public doesn't care about that. The public wants to know, if I have a problem, can you show up and solve our problem? That's what the public wants to know. But you can't do one without the other. You can't be very efficient at the agency and the public trust or the effectiveness of being what you need for the public sucks. And hence you can't be so effective in the street that you don't want to be efficient, and therefore you get in trouble maybe legally back at your agency. So hence the tightrope. You got to know how to walk that tightrope. And the higher you get in rank, the more the tightrope becomes more accountable, more dangerous, if you will. And I remember that I'm the kind of person that when we first wrote it, I'm more visual. So I always got this circus music in my head out to like really turn down when I'm presenting, so I don't laugh. And people wonder like, what's he laughing at? Because the circus music in my head is like, with the tightrope, I always think about the person like, high above the crowd, under the big top is the tightrope. And this person is going to walk across the tightrope with no net and do this death-defying stunt. And a lot of times in my visual mind's eye, that's how I picture being, at the chief level on up, is that there's a tightrope. And so when you are first come on the job, the tightrope is closer to the job. Nobody expects you to know a lot or be responsible for a lot. That's why you clean the toilets and mop the floor and do more of that kind of stuff, because you're trying to learn the profession. So if you fall off that tightrope, it's no big deal. You just step on the floor, get back on the tightrope, and keep walking. When you kind of move up to company officer or any other thing that's above maybe probationary or firefighters, then of course the tightrope gets a little higher, because now I'm more responsible, get more accountable, and you can get in more trouble, and you can get more trouble with your crew. So tightrope a little higher. And as you advance up and you get deputy chief, assistant chief, fire chief, the tightrope is even higher, because now you're responsible to not only your crew, your agency, but now you have to negotiate things with the people who give you the money in your city government and things like that. If you're not a good politician in that regard, then your department suffers. So you got to be accountable to your department and don't hurt them. And you got to be accountable to the powers that be that give you the resources for your department. So we talk about a lot of that, how to navigate that tightrope in our class. We want you to be able to walk across that tightrope and be able to withstand as many predictable winds as you can. And it's windy, it's lonely up there. Depending on where you work, you may work a small tightrope because you only have one-story buildings and you're only going to break a leg if you fall off that tightrope. Or you may work for a big agency and now the tightrope is above two high skyscrapers and the death-defying balancing act is going between those two buildings because you got more responsibility. You got more responsibility probably in New York City as a fire chief than you do in Collinsville, Illinois as a fire chief, because it's a taller, bigger, a more accountable system that you're dealing with. So the community expects effectiveness when we're in the community. Our agencies expect us to be efficient. when we talk, when we teach GLUE, Growing Leaders Youth Empowerment Workshop, we teach based on 7 principles, which we call the Empower Model. If you ever been to our class, we really drill down on how the Empower Model can guide you, whether you are a team member as a fire private or you are you're an officer on your job. And the reason we talk about that personal leadership is because we don't want what's going on personally to clash in the intersection with your professional life. And a lot of people are doing this. A lot of people are getting fired because their lack of personal discipline maybe make them put stuff on social media that's not favorable as their brand as a firefighter. Next thing you know, they're fired because the agency is going to separate themselves from you. So their personal leadership is really important. And if you don't have the family together at home, it's going to be hard for you to participate as a quality family member at the job. So that being the case, if the tightrope even is at home and at work, do you walk that tightrope making sure that things at home don't affect things that you're doing at work? And when we teach in the class, the Empower model has 7 elements. Like I said, E stands for envision. That keeps your eyes on the prize regarding the organization, the mission, and the purpose and the needs of your community. The M in the envision in the Empower model is the mutual victory, and the internal and external victories with stakeholders and keeping both happy as much as possible, because they're not always going to be a seamless consensus. So internally, the leadership has to negotiate with members, the union, the city hall, city managers, mayors, human resources, etc. Externally, community leaders, citizens, business owners, and all the fire departments that we serve respected to communities and taxpayers. The P in the Empower model is being proactive in training, relationships, and planning for current and future projects to keep the fire department progressive and effective. When you talk about the O in the Empower model, organizing priorities is very pivotal in the art of the tightrope. Your department personnel has to have its own version of what priorities are in all of the city, the council, the alderman, the financial director, and have those priorities for the department as well. Working together, that's the W in the Empower model, is a bigger responsibility, the higher the tightrope from the ground. As the firefighter, you only worry about your team, but as you move up and ascend up the ranks, your fire chief working together, running the department and being a politician to help access the resources that you need to run the fire department. Empathetic listening, that's the E in the Empower model. And it's even more important the higher the tightrope is, because the better you listen, the better you can serve. And then the R is the recharge. That's the last part of the Empower model. And because the tightrope requires your whole being, you being there, you have to recharge, got to get proper rest, you got to get proper mental health and physical health, so you can always be on your A game, no matter what capacity you are in that fire service. So we're going to have a deeper dive into all of it when we talk at FDIC. My brother David will be joining us, so it's always entertaining because both of us are crazy people. So we like to have fun while we're doing our class, but at the same token, if you stick around and you might learn something. Hey.
Thanks. Thank you, Chief. Sounds like a very interesting class. Next, we will move on to Asbel Montes.
So I can get to my mute button here. Thanks, Lisa, for inviting me to speak here as well. If you can't tell from my accent, I'm a Southern boy. So I live here in Austin, Texas, as well. So glad to get up to Indianapolis and talk to a lot of individuals as well. I'm actually talking about leadership, and I'm talking about courage in the uncomfortable. And I think generally speaking, and I believe that right when I logged in, we were talking about some of the uncomfortable nature of what we're seeing, whether it's on the political realm, whether it's in the employer community, specifically within the fire EMS space. is very interesting to see the transition of the new generation that's coming in, and we're having a lot of retirement and the different structures of managing and how do we do that. So my speech really is kind of more probably targeting if you're already in a leadership position or you're aspiring to be in a leadership position. What does that mean? So I know one thing that we talk about right away is, and many of you that may read some Brene Brown stuff, she speaks a lot of great stuff. But the one thing that that resonates with me is clear as kind, unclear as unkind. And we like to add a little bit of note to that says truth without kindness is brutality. And many times as we get into hierarchical leadership or this command and control type leadership, there's a difference between doing more tactical work or whether protocol driven work, if you're in the EMS side of the space and a paramedic or something like that, is it's really easy to just go on autopilot. But what happens when I move into management? Do I take that same process of protocol driven, and it doesn't really technically work that way? Sometimes we just hear and say, well, that's the truth. I'm sorry that you received it that way. And we as a leader, can we do something differently? And so there is a concept that we've done around leadership, especially for the last year, and it's really been just birthed out of my own personal journey. And what has that done over the last 27 years, really being in the EMS space? I've done a lot on more of the political nature, a lot of advocacy work, whether it was federal, state related. Now I own a healthcare technology company, very specific in the healthcare space, a lot in EMS. And so what does that journey mean, and what does that look at? There's one thing that I note that if you're going to attend, we're going to talk a lot about courage, because it takes courage to have these uncomfortable conversations. It's easy for me to be in a comfort zone. And that's easy. It's a nice place to stay. I don't really have to do anything. It's great. I can maneuver through it. The water's pretty calm. But the moment I start having to make change and I have to grow as a person, it gets really uncomfortable. W. Clement Stone says it this way: have the courage to say no. Have the courage to face the truth. Do the right thing because it is right. These are the magic keys to living your life with integrity. And we're facing that. There's a lot of uncomfortability happening right now. In over the last probably 3 months, we can probably all name some very uncomfortable spots that we've been in. And have we had the courage to have some of those conversations? Have we had the courage to have no? Chief Wesley, you said it so wonderfully earlier when you were talking about you said what you permit, you promote. And I go further to say what you allow, you encourage, and what you condone, you own. And that's really important, that as a leader, if we don't speak up, if we don't have those uncomfortable conversations, just the mere act of allowing it means I'm permitting that. I'm encouraging it. I'm condoning it. And when you look at that in your own personal leadership, what am I doing through that process? Roy Bennett says it this way: it's only after you've stepped outside of your comfort zone that you will begin to change, you'll grow, and you'll transform. So I have to get outside my comfort. I have to do the things that are uncomfortable. And so whether I'm leading, it's a lot different than if I'm on a fire truck, if I'm in EMS, if I'm a paramedic, I'm working whatever you're doing. Once you move into leadership, it's going to change. Things are going to be different. I've got to deal with different personalities. And I can say, well, you either conform to what I do, you follow my leadership process, you maintain that culture gets kind of nuts through the process, or you say, it's easy for me to change. It's easy for me to kind of look, self-direct. It's what I call reflect first versus deflect. It's very easy to deflect. It's very easy to blame someone else. But can we have that courage to look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, maybe there's something that I'm doing. Maybe there's some questions that I need to ask myself. And so we'll explore some questions. We're going to explore that understanding. We're going to look at it. We're going to watch videos. We're going to see, we're going to hear personal experiences, personal stories of how we have maneuvered in the uncomfortable, how we've made those changes, how we've evolved, what we've done through the process. And we're going to walk through a few questions. And one thing is we're going to lean into it. I always say when you get uncomfortable, that's the first thing. Don't run from it. Lean into it and start to change. Start to grow as a leader, because you'll be surprised at this generation wants authentic leadership. Hello, social media tells us all we need to know about it, how authentic and transparent that they want to be in order to grow through the process, and how we can become better leaders as well. So I know one of the presenters here, I'm just very interested in listening to what everybody's talking about, from the tightrope that really resonates, depending upon how high that tightrope gets in leadership, is very precarious, gets really uncomfortable as you work through it, to understanding the different social dynamics of what makes up the psychology of leadership as well. So really looking forward to joining and looking forward to presenting and talking about how we can be more courageous and lean into that uncomfortable part of it. So thanks for letting me join.
Well, thank you for joining. And now we have John.
Well, you probably heard that ancient Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And the last 18 months, more things have happened in the law that directly affect fire departments than any period I can think of. But first, we have what has turned into a almost literal blizzard of presidential executive orders, many of which have an effect, or people believe have an effect, on the fire service, and some do and some don't. I think almost everybody by now is familiar with what's going on with the National Fire Academy. They have canceled all of their resident courses. And it's hard to tell whether it's for DEI examination purposes or it's because they're looking at how much money it costs them to put on the training. There's more craziness afoot. Federal female firefighters. Last year, the Department of Labor declared that breast, cervical, and other cancers associated with women's status as firefighters would be considered worker compensable. And suddenly the online reference to that is gone. And when you contact the Department of Labor, their answer is, we do not have any additional updates regarding your inquiry. In fact, there are certain things that were on the internet, especially from EEOC, that provided very helpful guidance, and they've been taken down. If you go to the document, it will take you to a page that said document not found. As Kansas City, Missouri has found out, the Department of Justice used to get involved in helping fashion long-range solutions to discrimination issues in the department. And the Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has announced that Department of Justice will no longer be involved in those kinds of activities. And a lot of controversy has come about recently because of the issue of the role of people who are gay or trans. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that a Supreme Court case called Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia, is still the law. And that essentially says that sexual orientation or how you present is based on sex, and therefore it's protected by the Title VII of the employment protection laws. So one of the things I'll have at my conference is a QR code for a website that tracks all the president's executive orders, if anyone feels so inclined. Marijuana, the biggest change has been the rise of medical marijuana, and in many states, and soon most states, a positive THC test will no longer be sufficient for termination of employment or discipline. The question will be, is that firefighter under the influence of tetrahydrocannabinol? And there fortunately is a training program. There's no breathalyzer test equivalent yet for THC, but there is a training program that's recognized in law. It's called Drug Evaluation and Classification, and it's sponsored by the American District Attorneys Association and the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And it primarily involves police officers, and it's the training they undergo to develop the ability to test in the field for being under the influence of a drug and have those tests stand up in court. And my advice now to fire departments is check with your police department, see if those folks have that training, and have them on speed dial, and don't rely on a positive drug test. There's another trend that's developing because between prescribed opioids, medical marijuana, and the other drugs of today, there's a profession that's evolving called medical review officer. And one of the things I'll talk about is an organization that's developed that concept. And I urge fire departments to look at that because pretty soon it's going to be impossible to do all the other things we have to do and be able to stay current with the data there. You probably all remember the two Aurora, Colorado fire paramedics who were fired after giving an overdose of ketamine to a civilian who was undergoing what some folks refer to as excited delirium. I'm here to tell the group that there is no such thing as excited delirium. All of the medical associations that endorsed it at one time have backed away. They like to talk now in terms of behavioral emergencies. And one of the things I direct people to is a really fantastic resource for that, developed by the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the Chiefs of Police, and the National Association of Emergency Physicians. And it's a cooperative standard operating procedure on how to medically handle a behavioral emergency. One of my pieces of advice is if you get an EMS call that sounds like a behavioral emergency, a supervisor should respond with the primary EMS unit on that call. Other miscellaneous areas, can a transfer be retaliation? For example, transferring somebody in connection with, say, a sexual harassment complaint. The answer used to be that a transfer had to cause some substantial disadvantage to the person transferred in order for it to be considered retaliation for a complaint, whether it be about sexual harassment, racial harassment, or any other form. And the Supreme Court recently changed that standard, and unfortunately, it's a little bit vague at the moment. We're going to find out through future case law. They say instead of that substantial standard, the new standards, if you suffer some harm or some disadvantage in the transfer, then you can make a case for retaliation. Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. There's good news as far as the presidential proclamations go. There was a strong rumor that the EEOC's Pregnant Workers Fairness Act rules adopted a year ago, April, were going to be withdrawn. And then somebody read the law establishing the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, and they noted that when you have a rule adopted like that, it takes a majority of the EEOC to withdraw the rule, and that hasn't happened yet. And it's unlikely to happen, at least in the near future. The first EEOC cases are appearing, and we also have a compilation of some of the common complaints we're hearing from employees about how their pregnancies are dealt with in the workplace. The good news about the lawsuits is that it's not anything subtle that anyone's doing, but then, of course, the fire service has often been like other employers, and that is we tend to do dumb stuff. So these cases and the complaints that have been compiled by EEOC will help steer folks in the right direction. Another major change is in connection with Title VII and Americans with Disabilities Act, their idea about asking your employer for a reasonable accommodation in order to continue to work. For example, a pregnant employee can ask for a reasonable accommodation. And a fire chief has the right to turn it down if it presents an undue hardship. Now, up until last year, undue hardship was treated by most of us as undue hardship for the fire department. You know, it's something that would be unpopular. We'll have to hire somebody on overtime. That standard has changed and changed significantly. So in Baltimore County, for example, employer undue hardship would be based on the hardship presented to the County of Baltimore government, all the departments, all agencies, sheriff, public works, libraries, not just the fire department. I don't think most municipalities or local government units have figured that out yet, but what it offers the fire chief is an opportunity to work with his or her peers and the other organizations to see if they can develop collective strategies on working with employees on reasonable accommodations. And the final thing I'll be talking about is I've seen very complicated free speech and social media policies, and we'll be talking about a much simpler set of policy elements that departments can use that communicate more clearly to the members what limits there are on free speech and social media speech in the fire service. Like I say, it's very interesting times and it can be complicated, but that's why my presentation is called Mapping the Minefield.
John, I got a quick question. You mentioned at the start about the NFPA classes being canceled because of DEI. Are you actually going to talk about what DEI is in your class? Because there seems to be a lot of misconception.
Yeah, and it's not NFPA, it's NFA, the National Fire Team.
Sorry about that. So you will actually.
Yes, we'll be talking about, there's some misunderstandings basically about what DEI is or isn't. And I've got a listing of things that the presidential executive orders are directed at and the things that still fall outside the area of that criticism that can make for a good program. But the problem with DEI is that it's like the word woke. Nobody can really define it, and they certainly can't define it in a legal sense. So that's part of what I'll be talking about.
I appreciate that. Does anybody have anything to add or any questions for any of our speakers? Okay.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Montes, are you really from Austin? Because you're only 3 miles south or 3 hours south of me, and we don't sound the same at all. You sound like East Texas.
I'm really from North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm in North
Carolina.
Yay, North Carolina. Where in North Carolina?
I grew up in a town called Burlington, North Carolina.
I know where Burlington is. I live in Asheville.
Oh,
Asheville's
beautiful.
beautiful.
So yeah, I grew up all in North. All my family's in North Carolina. So
yeah, I was public safety director in Wake County, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Before I decided to talk and advise for a living.
So we probably know a lot of the same people.
Yep.
I'm sure.
I'm glad you asked that, Adam, because I was thinking the same thing. It's like, he does not sound like he's from Austin, Texas.
I was like, man, that's
He's like,
a waste. That's a Carolina. That's a Georgia. I got you pegged.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll just roll with it. But it's like,
yeah.
It's like,
and you notice
most people in Austin sound like they're from California.
Because they
move in here.
And I don't sound like I'm from North Carolina. I'm originally from Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Minnesota. John, what time are you all teaching?
Oh,
yeah, and I wish, real quick, I wish I could have told our listeners what time you were teaching, but I didn't get that information. I just got a list of the speakers and their classes. So it would have been, I know, really helpful to be able to say what time you guys were teaching, but unfortunately I didn't have that. So yeah, if you guys want to go back ahead, if you know when you're teaching, and go ahead and let everyone know when you're teaching, that's a good point.
Yeah, I put some notes in front of me and that wasn't included, so I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know ours is Tuesday morning. I know that because I know we got a pre-conference at FDIC Tuesday afternoon. So whatever that time slot is, Tuesday morning, like 9 o'clock or something.
Probably after
yeah, you're 9. Yeah, you're first.
Yeah.
I think last.
You're in the afternoon, Chief Tiffany?
Yes.
You're right before happy hour.
Yes. I stand in between. Yes. Yes.
So don't be long-winded. Yeah.
Right.
You never want to be between your audience and happy hour.
That's right. Are you all teaching for FDIC as well, John?
Yes.
Okay, great.
You are too, Chief Wesley?
Yes.
So we're looking forward to all our presenters. As you've heard, we've had some excellent presenters at our conference, and we have many more that were unable to join us tonight. There will also be a get together, a meet and greet at our leadership conference on that Tuesday evening, April 8th, after the classes. And so we hope to see everybody at our meet and greet as well. Everyone is invited to that. And I'd like to thank each of our guests for taking time out of their busy schedules to be a part of the Women in Fire radio show. Thank you to Fire Engineering again for allowing us to be a part of the show. Thanks to all the listeners and members of Women Fire. We hope to see all of you in April at FDIC. There's still time to register to join us. And follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and check out our website, womeninfire.org. And on the womeninfire.org website, if you're not already a member, it will take you to a tab where you can become a member, and anyone is welcome to become a member of our organization. It is not just for women only.
Lisa, if I could,
yeah, go right.
Somebody who couldn't make it is Elisa Arnoff.
Yes.
And she and I have done a lot of teaching together on the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And if you have an opportunity to attend her workshop, I think it'd be very entertaining and informative.
Actually called Putting Out the Personnel Files Before It Starts, an After Action Report Year in Review. Yeah, so she was unable to actually attend. And actually last year at our leadership conference, I attended you guys tag team the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the best classes I'd ever taken in the fire service. So it was very informative and there was a lot of good information. So I appreciate that. And you've helped out everyone that's reached out for pregnancy policies and such. You've been more than giving to hand out any information you have. I appreciate that.
In firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with trusted gear featuring brands like MSA Carnes for helmets and Seek for thermal imaging cameras. Stay prepared. Visit thefirestore.com today.
Fire Facilities manufacture steel live fire training towers, customized to meet your training needs. Check us out at FDIC or learn more at firefacilities.com.